Before we get started, I have to make some statements. First, this is not Russian propaganda. Second, this is not Western propaganda either. Third, and most importantly, this is not made by the Hungarian government, or by their sympathizers. To be completely honest with you, I'm fully disappointed in politics because they are all full of shit. None of those make sense to me, so I live my life trying to be objective and use my common sense, because no one will take care of my problems. No one will take care of the average Joes of the world, so along the road I've tried to absorb as much knowledge and information as possible to be able to live my own life and form my own opinion. I'm also not saying that we are the perfect nation, and our opinion is the best, but we exist and we have our own perspective. Probably you heard a lot of crap about us lately, and I'm sure I can explain a lot of those using logic and common sense. Or maybe not. So without further ado, let's get into it. Well, this is one of the most easiest answers. We aren't. Trust me, we know what it's like to live under a Russian supervision. For more than 4 decades they made so deep scars in this country that it still hasn't fully recovered yet. Freedom of speech were obviously oppressed, and everyone who were against this Soviet bullshit were either killed or sent to Siberia. So except the commies, no one likes the Russian leadership. When it comes to Orban, he and Putin share some common core conservative values like traditional family against the progressive ideas, and things like that, but that's all. You can basically call every conservative people in the US or Western Europe a friend of Putin by that statement. Officially, Hungary and the Hungarian government condemned Russia as an aggressor. Their actions are called war against a sovereign nation. Because at this point we have no other options. In the Soviet times, huge energy infrastructures were built obviously based on Russian gas and oil. We are also a landlocked country. We have no access to any port or sea, so only pipelines are available. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the government said
we have this fully built infrastructure capable of using cheap Russian gas. Obviously we're dependent on the Russians, but we have a lot of other important stuff to do after the Soviets messed everything up, so diversification is not a priority now.
And never became one. So you can call us dumb for not diversifying our energy sources, and you're absolutely right. But no one believed that Russia will eventually attack Ukraine. Even Europe's largest economy, Germany, did the same thing. They used cheap Russian energy to source their massive industries, and they became the 4th largest economy in the world exploiting this option. So before 2022 there was a potential path to a significant economic growth. The only problem is that Germany has sea access, so they could overcome their dependency easier. Pipelines are much harder to build because we cannot build pipelines on other countries' soil, so you need multiple countries to agree on everything before the construction starts, and that is a lot of time. The Hungarian government is now desperately trying to fix this issue, but it will take a long time and we can't do anything to speed it up. Look, there are 3 available options now. First, we will use Russian energy until we add more sources to our energy mixture. Basically until we build more pipelines. Takes years, but the transition can be manageable for everybody. Second, the Western powers are somehow magically build a complete pipeline system overnight that connects the landlocked Eastern European countries like Slovakia and Hungary to Western European ports, where we can fully supply our energy needs. This is not gonna happen anytime soon, especially not for an affordable price. The third option is that we cut all the Russian energy because of political pressure, or some pipeline sabotage. Not only the whole Hungarian economy would crash very very fast, but the majority of the Hungarian homes would left without heating and electricity. It would be anarchy. That would make almost 10 million refugees in the middle of Europe. That situation would be bad even for the Ukrainian leadership, because the EU would be busy cleaning up the mess in here instead of helping them fight against the Russians. Not to mention the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian refugees that came here for shelter or used our country as a transit stop. So this scenario is the lose-lose situation for everyone. By the way, it is very interesting that these media outlets and politicians call us war financiers. Think about it. Our country has a population of less than 10 million. There are more than 30 cities around the world with more people in it. Cities. Not countries. Do you really think that this small, recovering nation can really fund the huge Russian military complex? We barely even have our own army, so please don't make me laugh. Western countries still buy much more Russian energy than we do. They just use cover nations to avoid direct contact with the Russians. So the level of hypocrisy in these statements are hilarious. It is, even if there are more and more people like me, living outside politics and elections and all the crap attached to those. The elections are legit, but that is true that Orban modified the rules so he has a higher chance to win. That is not illegal, and to be honest with you, if there would be anyone who could do it better, I'm sure the people would elect him, her. But there aren't any of those, unfortunately. The average Hungarian sees politics like this.
On one side there is Orban, who is openly supporting his friends and loyals, making those spineless dickheads extremely rich. On the other side there are the opposition, who is supported by the progressive, leftist elite. They are basically taking the money out of the country on freight trains with the huge Western companies. So that money is never going to help my cause no matter who's in charge. Fuck that, Orban at least doesn't bow down to the first difficult opponent. I'd rather choose him than some fucked up American-made puppet.
The EU and independent organizations are watching all the Hungarian elections under a microscope, searching anything they could find against Orban. Nothing. So the elections are legit, or Orban is somehow so smart that he can easily trick all the most developed nations in the world with some sort of magical election mystery in the middle of the EU. Sad to see, but these people really voted for this bastard. You can call them dumb. I'm sure Western voters are always vote for the most sophisticated candidate, aren't they? Oh wait. Never mind. I'm sure our system is not perfect, but who has a perfect system? No one. Western nations has the same problems like corruption, inequality, aging population and so on. You cannot speak Hungarian, but trust me, there are a lot of anti-government stuff around here. I'm sure you heard that the media situation is particularly bad, and the government owns all the media outlets and therefore it can shape the mindset of the people. Well, the truth is the government bought some media companies, like this TV or this news agency. When this, Index, was bought by a close friend of the government, the editors, journalists, basically the majority of the editorial staff were left and they started Telex. The interesting part is you can still find anti-government stuff written on Index, so it is so funny when I hear that this is a country where it is impossible to criticize the government, or the PM. Let me show you something. This is a Hungarian stand-up comedian, and his take on the topic. The footage was taken at the 25th of March 2022, 1 month after the Russian invasion, and 2 months before the 2022 Hungarian elections, just to put it into context. And Orban's Fidesz party's slogan was like, "We are moving forward, not backward."
Kicsit máshogy alakul ez a kampány, mint ahogy tervezve volt, nem? Mert most olyan, Vladimir előre megy, nem hátra a kurva anyját. 70 éves a barom arcú, hát miért nem folytogatja otthon a saját unokáit az anyja dácsájába? Elindul, bazd meg az idióta. De mi a béke népe vagyunk, hiszen tudjuk, hogy előtte nap még Napóleonok voltunk. Harc! Ja, háború, akkor jaj, csúnya bum-bum, jaj, nem szabad. Most... Utána már John Lennonok lettünk egyből, jaj, ne, hát mi nem küldünk halált okozó fegyvereket, bazd, persze vízipisztolyt kérnek tőlük egyébként. Ne, halált okozó fegyvert mi nem fogunk küldeni, mi semmiképpen nem fogunk. Majd, hogyha kér a Vladimir, akkor küldünk, de addig mi nem küldünk fegyvert. Pedig békemisszió volt, nem sikerült a békemisszió, mert odaültették a nagyasztalhoz a kicsit. Nagyon messze volt, nem hallotta meg a... Azért jó, ezeket találkoznak, nem? Úgy... Nézik egymást, és akkor... Vladimir, léci, ne. Micsoda? Semmi, hagyjuk a picsába.
And the rant goes on and on and on. Does it look like a place without freedom of speech or government critics? This comedian is one of the most popular in Hungary. Obviously, the government-backed TVs will not air his specials, but that doesn't mean they're looking after him. You can be critical of the government. And we see it every day, not just in stand-up comedies. Articles, billboards, or even complete media outlets are doing it constantly. If you have more than 3 brain cells, you can find the information sources you like. Left side, right side, government, opposition, whatever. You can find what you want. When I want to gather information about a certain topic, I usually like to hear both sides, because everyone has their point of view and the truth is usually somewhere between them. About corruption, yes, it is present in Hungary. You know, we invented a lot of things, but corruption is not one of those. It's everywhere. Every country in every part of the world. I know this is complicated, and I agree that corruption is much more conspicuous in poorer countries, but Western leaders are acting like corruption happens only in our country. It is hard to respect these politicians because they are not better than Orban. However, they act like they are far better and smarter than him. Now this is a complex issue, I'm not gonna lie. The main reason is the Hungarian and the Ukrainian government are having a buff. After the Russians annexed Crimea back in 2014, Ukraine started to oppress the minorities and revoked a lot of rights minorities had before. This was mainly against the Russian minorities. But there are more than 150,000 Hungarian-speaking people in western Ukraine who were suffering from these reforms. So this sparked the conflict between the two governments obviously, and things only got worse as time went by. I don't want to be the judge in this situation, but would you help a country that is constantly threatening and talking trash to you? But I can also provide some historical reasons. In 1956 we made a revolution against the Soviets. We officially left the Warsaw Pact, wanted to join the European community, and start a capitalist-style economy. The US and the West didn't care. They didn't send us any support other than kind words. Then the whole world watched as the Red Army crushed an already disarmed nation with tanks. Our heroes has been hung up, and we had to deal with the wrath of these smelly Soviet morons. Why is it so fucking important to send every single piece of equipment to them? And then why wasn't so important 70 years ago when we needed that? And meanwhile, what did Ukraine do, other than paving the road for the Russians up to our borders? They did nothing. You know, my problem is military aid is a loan. No matter what you call it or how you wrap it, Ukraine will be in debt. Even when they won't really have to pay the money back. That's the worst. Ask the British why do they have US military bases in their country? Because Lend-Lease. If you cannot pay, then you will lose significant political and economic influence in your own country. Nothing is for free. And the average Ukrainians will pay the price for it. Obviously, US control is far better than Russian control, but it still sucks. It is still control. You are nothing in your own country. You have no voice, no power, no future. And when they realize this, they will be really upset. Which is understandable. I will try to oversimplify it, in order to be understandable for everybody. So I'm not trying to be rude, this is just for the explanation. So, you and your friends are sitting in a park when suddenly a poor man appears. Your friends feel so sorry for the unfortunate person, that they are immediately starting to give loans to him knowing the fact that he will not be able to pay back the money, but they see some valuable stuff or assets owned by him, so they will take that instead of the money. Unlike our friends, we don't need anything from this person, therefore we don't want to give them loans. That's it. There is a reason tied to the Russians as well because we need to maintain some sort of connection with them. I explained the reasons earlier, we have no other choices at the moment. That is not Russian propaganda, or friendship with Putin. We wanted to use Russia as the cheap gas station of the country, in order to try to close the gap between the West and us. We realized now that this is not gonna work, but we need much more time for the transition than Germany for example. So to summarize this topic on why we do not want to give military aid to Ukraine, here are the main points we talked about. Political and diplomatic problems. Historical problems. Economic and ethical problems. And we have to heat our homes, and no one can provide that now except the Russians. Okay, so I just wanted to clear up a few things with this video and I hope you found some interesting information in it. I don't want to attack or harm anybody, because there are good people and bad people everywhere in the world. This is the whole point. But the Western mainstream media is recently portraying us as some sort of deviant clown, who's always trying to annoy everyone else. I just want to say that sometimes we have some logic or common sense behind our statements. That is because we are different. We have different pasts, and different histories, so it is completely normal for me to think and sometimes act differently. And I think this could be one of our main strengths. Every liberal in the West is promoting diverse societies and multiculturalism until they meet somebody with a different opinion. After that, they will try to cancel or destroy them with whatever tools they have. How is this respecting other people's opinions? Why is it a problem when someone is trying to discuss a certain topic? This is what democracy should look like. People, with different backgrounds, trying to solve our problems together and probably make a better world for the next generations. But that requires everyone, so everyone should be treated equally, even if when you have disagreements. But the Hungarian perspective is not so complicated. This gentleman from the Czech Republic makes videos about politics and history and touches on a lot of topics, so he is extremely thorough. In one of his recent videos he was discussing who is going to be the dominant power in Eastern Europe, and he said this.
Romania and Poland are natural allies regarding Russian expansionism. Hungary is more ambiguous. People often say that Hungary and Orbán are pro-Russian, but I would say that they are just almost cynically pro-Hungarian. Hungarians have no reason to feel any affinity towards Russians, but I believe they feel a little affinity towards pretty much everyone. They see themselves as an island in the sea of enemies, a nation that stands alone against the world that wants to harm it. Hungarians never really reconciled with the loss of the historical lands of the Kingdom of Hungary. I would say that they might almost see an opportunity in the end of the current security architecture of Europe and following chaos. But since any attempts at Hungarian revisionism would inevitably clash with stiff opposition from Romania, Slovakia, Ukraine, and likely also Serbia, I find it very unlikely to succeed. The only scenario I can imagine is a Hungarian alliance with some dominant power that wants to rule the region and gives Hungary concessions as a reward for its loyalty. That already happened, and I hope it won't happen again. But under the right circumstances, they might also be a part of the anti-Russian coalition.
The first part is completely true, however. The age of enemies is over for us. We see our neighbors as partners, and as long as we can maintain our autonomy and get access to develop our communities in these countries, we will be friendly. No one is trying to redraw the borders, or planning to take back historical Hungarian territories other than some football ultras and extreme rightists. Our country was torn apart more than 100 years ago. Those days are over. It's gone. Now we have to live in the 21st century and face challenges again. And that challenge is Russia. So yes, we are part of the anti-Russian coalition. But our main goal is to maintain as much independence as possible within our borders politically and economically as well. And that is not an easy thing for a small country we are. So, we don't want the Russians. But we don't want the Americans or Western Europeans to parent us either, because they're obviously not seeing the problems we have, so they won't be able to solve them. We have to take care of our own problems because no one will do it for us. Especially not for free. That's it. Hungary first. Not Russia first. Not America first. Hungary first. It may sound ridiculous, but every country should do this. In an ideal world, but the world is not ideal, not equal, so politics, money, power, and influence will always change this ideology in a small country.